Most people assume that producing your own food demands relentless labor, hours of brutal watering, backbreaking weeding, a garden that ruthlessly sucks up your attention every single day. That's the exact reason countless busy folks never take the first step. You are trapped in exhausting 10 to 12-hour shifts with families to feed and crushing responsibilities filling every single block of your week. Adding a backyard garden to that chaotic schedule feels completely impossible. But here's the cold, biological truth. Certain crops are built fundamentally different, behaving more like indestructible assets than high-maintenance plants. Some vegetables are so incredibly forgiving, they continue pushing growth while you ignore them for weeks. They ignore severe root neglect. They bypass poor drainage traps. They easily survive brutal beginner mistakes that usually rot an entire garden overnight. The secret has nothing to do with becoming a master gardener. It is entirely about choosing smarter plants. Today, we are counting down 7 perennial food machines that practically grow themselves. These specific crops reward time-crunched families with a permanent, lifetime dividend of fresh food, while demanding almost zero effort in return. Make sure to stay until the very end, because the number one vegetable on this list is a permanent food machine that continues producing heavy gourmet harvests for decades. After a single planting. Let's get started. At number 7, we have mint. This is the ultimate survival crop for anyone with 0 spare hours. It operates more like a hyper-aggressive weed than a delicate garden plant. Standard herbs require precise seed starting, specific soil amendments, and daily monitoring. Mint completely bypasses that fragile cycle. It is an edible machine that craves absolute neglect to multiply at a literal rocket pace. Provide a basic potting soil medium, give it some indirect sunlight, throw in sporadic, careless watering. It will explode across your space within weeks. But let's halt the romanticized gardening fantasy for a moment. Real-world biology is brutal. Out in the open garden, mint possesses an unyielding, destructive underground root system called runners. If you make the rookie mistake of planting mint directly into your garden beds, or alongside other vegetables, its root system will spread invisibly beneath the surface, choke out all surrounding plant nutrition, and aggressively conquer your entire yard like an invasive species. To secure a bulletproof biological insurance policy against this root invasion, you must execute a strict physical isolation strategy. Only plant mint inside thick, heavy clay or plastic containers. Place them completely separate from your open soil beds. This confinement safely locks the beast inside a box, while guaranteeing you a permanent, non-stop supply of aromatic leaves for summer teas, fresh desserts, homemade drinks. Forget to water it during a brutal work week, and it bounces back within minutes of a heavy soak. At number 6, we have sweet potatoes. Some plants force you to hover over them constantly just to secure a tiny harvest. Sweet potatoes are built for absolute self-reliance, offering busy individuals a dual-yielding asset class that operates simultaneously above and below the soil line. Most people associate this crop with the starchy, nutrient-dense tubers developing underground, but the sprawling green vines above are fully edible and incredibly delicious. Fragile garden greens require protective shade cloth and endless pest sprays. Sweet potato vines thrive under hot summer conditions and establish a massive vegetative canopy. This plant eliminates your weekly yard maintenance entirely. Plant the slips into a deep container or a sunny corner. The aggressive vines carpet the soil completely, establishing a living biological weed barrier that chokes out sunlight and prevents 90% of competitive weed germination. That means zero manual weeding labor for you throughout the season. They do not require complex pruning. They do not need daily checking. They do not require expensive trellis netting. They simply absorb summer heat and quietly build a massive calorie supply underground. Months later, the system rewards you with an impressive harvest that constantly exceeds your initial investment. You secure fresh garden greens for cooking all summer long, followed by a heavy box of durable sweet tubers in late autumn. At number 5, we have collard greens. Fragile leafy greens are a constant source of stress for busy people. Lettuce and traditional spinach wither and die the moment the weather shifts unpredictably. Collard greens are engineered with a thick, structural leaf anatomy that acts like pure steel in the face of environmental stress. They handle intense summer heat waves without bolting or turning bitter, and they survive deep winter freezing temperatures with total ease. This dual-season toughness makes them one of the most reliable, heavy-producing greens in existence. The fatal mistake most beginners make is tearing up the entire plant during harvest, believing it to be a one-time, single-use crop. To run this food machine at peak efficiency, you must execute the outer leaf harvest strategy. Use sharp shears, or your thumb. Clean snap the massive lower leaves right at the base of the stalk. Always leave the central growing core completely untouched. The plant responds by immediately channeling energy upward, generating fresh rows of nutrient-packed leaves from the center in an endless automatic cycle. A small cluster of established collard greens can easily supply a family with dark, iron-rich greens for months on end. Without ever needing to clear the soil or restart seeds, it carries its own weight in the garden workload. At number 4, we have rosemary. If vegetables had personality types, rosemary would be the rugged loner that completely resents your affection. This tough Mediterranean shrub is biologically wired to thrive on sheer neglect, and actually suffers when you try to care for it too much. Once its woody root system settles into its space, it handles severe drought, intense sun exposure, and zero fertilization without dropping a single needle. But let's look at the real-world data from experienced growers, because a devastating gap exists here. Countless urban gardeners buy beautiful rosemary plants, only to watch them turn black and rot from the bottom up within a few weeks. This is the tham hwar of killing your plant with excessive love. Rosemary roots require constant air circulation. They cannot tolerate standing moisture. If you plant it in heavy clay soil or standard peat-based potting mixes that retain water, the roots suffocate and drown overnight. To build a permanent rosemary asset, you must lock in a strict drainage parameter. Mix your soil using exactly 50% clean organic compost and 50% coarse sand, perlite, or small gravel. This gravelly matrix allows water to flush through instantly, mimicking the dry cliffs of its native habitat. Never water it until the soil is bone dry to the touch. This simple rule secures a permanent, multi-year supply of intense wood oils for roasted meats, artisanal breads, natural backyard insect control. If you are serious about growing real food without turning it into a stressful, exhausting second job, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications. We drop raw, actionable, zero-fluff gardening guides every single week, all designed to help you crush grocery store inflation with zero wasted effort. At number 3, we have garlic chives. Regular onions and grocery store garlic require an entire season of waiting, careful soil prep, and manual replanting every single year. Garlic chives solve this efficiency problem completely, operating as a permanent, cold-hardy perennial asset that returns automatically, like clockwork. They merge the crisp, clean texture of chives with a subtle garlic oil punch that upgrades any savory recipe. Once their dense bulb clumps settle below the surface, they become entirely bulletproof against changing weather patterns, severe winter freezes, and sporadic watering routines. The harvest routine is beautifully low maintenance. Instead of digging up the root and destroying the plant, you simply cut the narrow green leaves horizontally, exactly 1 inch above the soil line. The base remains completely intact and immediately begins driving fresh green spears upward within days. It is the definition of a closed-loop food system. That cuts out the repetitive work of buying seeds and nurturing delicate seedlings every spring. You plant this perennial asset once, and it continues to pay food dividends leaf by leaf for years to come, expanding its bulb mass naturally without any extra labor on your part. At number 2, we have Egyptian walking onions. This is arguably the strangest and most intelligent crop available for a time-crunched backyard, because it literally possesses a biological mechanism to plant its own offspring without your help. Traditional onion varieties produce fragile flowers that require pollination and manual seed collection. The Egyptian walking onion completely skips this step. Instead of flowers, the top of its tall, hollow green stalks develops a heavy cluster of small, living bulb topsets. As these clusters absorb nutrients and gain weight, the main stalk naturally begins to bow and kong toward the earth under the heavy load. Eventually, the top cluster makes direct contact with the bare soil several inches away from the parent base. The tiny bulbs immediately throw out aggressive roots, anchor themselves into the ground, and establish brand new, independent clones. The onion has effectively taken a physical step across your garden bed, which is exactly where its historic name comes from. For a busy individual, this self-propagating loop means your food plot continuously expands and regenerates on autopilot, with zero human intervention. They survive extreme winter sunggya, ignore severe neglect, and ensure you have a constant source of sharp green stalks and pungent cooking bulbs for years. And, finally, at number 1, we have asparagus. This is the undisputed king of low-maintenance food production, representing the ultimate long-term financial investment in your backyard food security. 99% of garden vegetables are annuals, meaning you are locked into a continuous, exhausting loop of clearing beds, buying seeds, tilling soil, and planting every spring. Asparagus completely breaks this cycle. One single, proper initial planting of an asparagus bed can reward you with heavy gourmet harvests for 15, 20, or even 25 years, continuously, without ever touching a seed packet again. However, real-world biology demands a strict rule of patience at the beginning, creating a vital gap that most beginners fail to respect. During the first 2 years of establishing a new asparagus bed, you must execute absolute discipline and completely ban yourself from harvesting a single spear. The immature spears must be allowed to grow freely into massive, fern-like green foliage that stands several feet tall. This heavy foliage acts like a massive solar panel, capturing energy and funneling it deep underground to build a massive, permanent crown and root matrix. If you give in to greed and cut the spears early, you permanently starve the crown, ensure weak future growth, and kill the multi-decade investment before it even starts. To bypass the first year of waiting, always buy 1-year-old bare crowns instead of seeds. From year 3 onward, the gourmet is fully locked. Every single spring, thick, tender gourmet spears will automatically burst through the soil like clockwork. You collect your clean, expensive harvest for a few weeks, and then let nature manage the rest for the next 2 decades. Real gardening success is never about working yourself to physical exhaustion. It is about deploying superior plant genetics and design. The right choices, forgive your hectic lifestyle, survive intense stress, and feed you anyway. To slash your labor down even further, execute this final step. Apply a thick, heavy layer of organic mulch across your entire root zone. Source clean wood chips for free from local tree trimming crews or arborists. This mulch layer locks moisture into the soil, suffocates weed germination by 90%, and drives your weekly watering labor down to practically zero. Pick just 2 machines from this list. Secure your quick wins. Build your confidence. Gardening should never become an exhausting second job. The most productive setups run entirely on plants that feed you while taking care of themselves. Stop watching. Get outside. Plant these 7 lifetime machines right now.